everyone, in today's session we will discuss about the next topic of the chapter, how do organisms reproduce, and the next topic is sexual reproduction. Okay, so sexual reproduction takes place, it takes place by the combination of special reproductive cells. Got it? A reproductive cell. Okay, and these cells are known as the sex cells. Okay, and sex cells are of two types. It can be a male sex cells, okay, male sex cells, as well as another type is the female sex cell, which is present in the body of female. Okay, got it? Male sex cell that which is present in the body of male. Male means to say that is boy, any man, that is your father. Father is the male, okay, and female is your mother. Okay, so the sex cell which is present in the body of female is known as the female sex cell, and the sex cell which is present in the body of male is known as the male sex cells. Okay, clear? So basically these are come from the two different parents, a male and a female. Okay, now these sex cells also known as the gametes. Okay, these are also known as gamete here, gametes. So you can commonly call it the male gamete and the female gamete. Okay, you also call it male gamete and female gamete. Got it? Okay, now the sex cells are commonly known as gametes, as I told you, that the cells involved in the sexual reproduction are called the gametes. Okay, clear? Now the fusion of these two gametes, forms a new cell which is known as zygote. Beta, these are the terminologies which we will discuss, which we will use many times in this chapter. Okay, clear? Which we will mostly using the term. These terms, okay, so keep this in your mind, all the terms, you have to learn all the terminologies, okay, because these terminologies are very much important for this particular chapter. Okay, now come to the point. As I told you that male sex cells, that is the male gamete, and female sex cell, that is the female gamete. Both of these fuse together, then they form a new cell which is known as the zygote, and this zygote further grows and it develops into a new organism. Got it? It develops into a new organism in due course of time. Okay, clear? And please note that the sex cells or the gametes are also called the germ cells. Okay, so this is also known as the male germ cell. Look at this, there are so many terminologies related to a single word. Okay, so here you also call it male, female germ cell. Okay, so basically what I told you in this point, that reproductive cells are known as the sex cells. Clear? And there are two type of sex cells are present. Okay, there are two type of sex cells are present. These cells are the male sex cells and the female sex cells. Okay, here the male sex cells are also known as the male germ cells and the male gamete, as the female sex cells also known as female gametes and the female germ cells. Okay, so when both of these fuse together now, then they form a new cell which is known as the zygote. Okay, and with due course of time, this zygote develop into a new organism. Okay, so this is all about the sexual reproduction. This is the steps which occur in case of the sexual reproduction. Okay, now, okay, so write down that flower, it is the reproductive part of angiosperm. Now what do you mean by this angiosperm? What is this angiosperm? Angiosperms, beta, these are known as flowering plants. Okay, so flowering plants are commonly known as angiosperm. Okay, learn this, that what are angiosperm? The flowering plants are commonly known as angiosperms. Okay, so here as I told you, the flowers are the reproductive part of angiosperms. Okay, Clear? And how the flowering parts reproduce, how the flowering plant reproduce? They reproduce by the method of sexual reproduction. Got it? Okay, it means to say there is involvement of two parents occur. Okay, male and female. Both of these give the their gametes. Okay, and after that their gametes fuse together, then they form a zygote, and further this zygote develop into a new organism. Okay, so this is all the process which is occur in the sexual reproduction. Okay, same thing happen in case of the flowering plants. Okay, so let us discuss about more important point regarding the sexual reproduction in plants. Okay, now look at this diagram, the diagram of flower. What you noticed here, that it contains different part. Okay, so basically your flower contain different part. Okay, so let me introduce these part. The part of the flowers are the sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. Okay, and out of these four part, only two are essential part, that is the stamens and the carpel. Okay, the stamen and carpel, these are the essential part of flower. These are essential part. Okay, but sepals and petal, there are two more part, that is the sepal and petal. These are known as non-essential part. Non-essential part. Why I am saying essential and non-essential? Because in this chapter we will discuss about only the reproductive process. Okay, we will discuss about the reproduction, not anything else. Okay, so for this we need only reproductive part. Okay, got it? So these two things, these two stamens and carpel, these are the reproductive part. Okay, reproductive part in flower. Which is the most reproductive part? Stamen and carpels. Why? Because beta, stamen is the male reproductive part, while carpel is the female reproductive part. Okay, so this is the male reproductive. Okay, so stamen is known as the male reproductive part. Male reproductive part. I hope you can see this reproductive part. Okay, and carpel is known as the female reproductive part. Female reproductive part. Okay, got it? Do you know that carpel is also known as pistil? So don't get confused. Okay, this pistil, here pistil is written na, here pistil is written na, this means to say carpel. Okay, so don't get confused. Okay, so what I told in this session, that the reproductive part of the plant is the flower. Okay, and flower contain different part. It contains sepals, petals, stamens and carpel. Okay, stamen is the male reproductive part and carpel is the female reproductive part. Okay, so in this chapter we will only discuss about the stamen and carpel in detail. Okay, now so look at the diagram. Just one point I want to show you with the help of diagram. Look at the diagram. What you observe here, that how many anthers are present here? Can you observe that there are so many anthers are present here? Look at this. Look at this. There are so many anthers are present. As I told you na, that in a flower there are so many anthers. So many anthers are present. Okay. Clear? Now, what about the stigma and what about the carpel also? If I am showing the diagram of a carpel, look at the diagram of carpel. This carpel is surrounded by, okay, so what you notice here, that this carpel is surrounded by a number of male organ, that is the stamens. Okay, got it? So this is the carpel, pistil, which is also known as the pistil. Don't get confused. This is also known as pistil. Okay, this is surrounded by large number of stamen. Okay, clear? So there is only one carpel is present in a flower, but there are so many stamens are present in a flower. Okay, now here Before discussing about the reproductive system, let me introduce two words, unisexual flower and bisexual flower. Okay, there are some flower which is known as bisexual flower, got it, while there is some flower which is known as unisexual flower. Okay, what do you mean by these words? What do you mean by these terminologies? Actually, bisexual means to say that the both male and female reproductive parts, these are not separate. Okay, these are not separate. It means to say that both the male and female reproductive organs are present in the same plant. Okay, so write down the definition that both male, when the both male and female reproductive parts are present in the same plant. It means to say one plant, one flower having two sexes, male and female, both sexes are present in a single flower. Okay, and what about the unisexual? Unisexual means to say that separate reproductive part, they have separate reproductive part, that is the both male and female reproductive part are present in the different plant. Okay, so write down male and female reproductive part. Okay, reproductive part means to say the part which are part of our body which is used in case of reproduction. Okay, parts are present in different plant, different flower. Just write on the flower because flower is the reproductive part. Now, so here is the different and here is the same. Okay, bi means to say two. Bi means to say it's two. A flower contains two sexes. Okay, uni means to say one. When a flower contains one sex, either a male or a female. Okay, now let me tell you the examples. Okay, write down the examples. These are very important. Okay, bisexuals are the hibiscus, okay, as well as the mustard flower. Mustard flowers are yellow in color, na? Do you remember? Okay, so mustard flower, these are the bisexual flowers. Okay, while in case of unisexual flower, the most important papaya, yes, the yellow fruit, the yellow or orange fruit, papaya, and a watermelon fruit. Okay, most delicious fruit. Okay. Okay, now here I am going to show you the male reproductive part. Okay, so first of all we will discuss about the male reproductive part, then we will discuss about the female. Okay, so male reproductive part, okay, which is the stamen. Clear? So it consists of two parts. It is made up of two parts. Stamen is made up of two parts, beta. Okay, first one is the anther and second is the filament. Okay, now look at the diagram. It is given here. Anther and the filament. Okay, so what you observe here, that anther is a swollen top. Okay, what is anther? It is a swollen top which is present at the top, swollen top of a stamen. Okay, while if I am talking about the filament, it is just like a stalk, like a structure. So just write down the stalk of a stamen. Okay. Now let me show you the function. Let me tell you the function of anther. So what is the function of anther? So anther part of a stamen, it makes the pollens. Okay, it makes pollen. Okay, and store it. Got it? Okay, now look at the diagram, that where is this pollen part. Okay, look at this. This is the pollen grains. Can you see this? Okay, let me highlight more. Yeah, here. These are the pollen. Okay, got it? These are the pollen parts. Okay, students. Now, what about this? Actually, this pollen is a yellow powder like substance. Okay, so this is the pollen grains. They make the pollen grains, which is a yellow powder like substance. Got it? Clear? So keep this in your mind. And what is this pollen grain? One important thing, this pollen grain, this is the pollen grain. Actually, they contain male gametes. Got it? They contain male gamete, that is the male sex part is present. This is the male sex part, okay. They contain male gamete of the plant. Got it? So it is clear from this discussion that the male gamete of a plant are made in the anther. Where they are made? They are made in the anther of the stamen. Another point you have to keep in mind that a flower usually have number of stamen, not only one stamen is present, okay. They contain number of stamens, okay. So many stamens are present in a flower. Now let's see female reproductive part of the flower, okay. So here is the carpel. Carpel is the female reproductive part of the flower, okay. So this is the female reproductive part, okay. So just like the stamen, carpel also consists of many part, okay. So first of all, look at the diagram, okay. So this is the female reproductive part. Look at this diagram, okay. This is present in the center of the flower. Got it? And what you observe, that is a flask like structure, flask shaped organ, okay. And it consists of stigma, it consists of a style, it consists of ovary, and it consists of ovule, okay. So let me explain you each and every part in detail, okay, of this carpel. First part is the stigma. So what is the role of stigma? Okay, so what is the role of stigma? It receives the pollen. What it will do? It receiving the pollen. The role is to receiving the pollen grain, okay. Pollen grains from anther of stamen. Anther of stamen. Got it? They receive pollen grains from anther of stamen, okay. So what I told you in the last slide, that pollen grains are present. Where these are present? These are present in the anther part, okay. So from anther part they come toward the stigma. How they come toward the stigma? Actually the pollens are transfers from the anther to the stigma with the help of different agents such as the wind, insects, water, birds, okay. When the insects sit on the anther, then a pollen grain stick on their body, okay. Then with the help of insects they transfer, and after some time when the insects okay move toward the stigma, then this pollen grains stick on the body of stigma, okay. This is how the stigma receive the pollen grain from the anther, okay. Clear? Now next is the style part, okay. So what you observe here, the style is a tube like structure, is it? It is a tube like structure. Look at the diagram, tube like structure, okay. So it is a tube like structure, okay. And it connect the stigma to the ovary. It connect the stigma to the ovary, okay, to the ovary, okay. So write one more regarding the stigma also. Regarding the stigma, I'm going to write it there that sticky, this is a sticky part. That's why the pollen grains stick on it. So pollen grains stick on it. Stick on it. I hope you got it. Okay. Now next part is the ovary. Yes, ovary. This is a swollen part. Look at this part. This is a swollen part. Okay. At the bottom of the carpel, where it is present at the bottom of carpel. Carpel. Okay. Clear? Now last part is the ovule, okay. So what is function of ovary? Do you know about that? That ovary, it makes the ovule. What they make? They make the ovule, okay, and store them, just like the anther. What are the role of the anther? Anther, which is the male reproductive part of female, got it? They form the pollen grains and store that. Just like that, here ovary form the ovule. So they make the ovules and store them, okay. So here ovule is the female gametes, okay. So this can be framed as a question, beta. This can be framed as a question, that which is the female, what is the name of female gametes in flowering plants? So ovule, the answer will be the ovule. And what is the name of male gametes in flowering plant? Then answer will be the pollen grains. Yes, very good. Clear? Now, okay. Okay, beta. Now next topic is pollination. Okay, so here I am going to explain you pollination. Before this, I will tell you that for the male gamete to be able to combine with female gamete, it is very necessary that first the pollen grains from the anther of stamen should be carried to the stigma of carpel. So how this will happen? How they will go from the stigma to the stigma to the carpel? How they will go? Actually, this process, there is a process, and this process is known as pollination. Okay, so the process of transfer of pollen's grain from anther to the stigma of flower is known as the pollination. Okay, clear? So basically there are two types of pollination. First one is known as self-pollination. First one is the self-pollination. Okay, and second is the cross-pollination. So write down cross-pollination. I will explain you, just wait a minute. Just after writing now, I will explain you. Okay, so second is the self-pollination, when the transferring occur in the same flower. I mean to say the process, write down the definition, and then it will be clear to you all that the process of transfer of pollen, okay, transfer of pollen grains from where? From anther. Okay, when there is a transfer of pollen grain from anther to stigma of the same flower. Okay, when there is a transferring occur in the same flower. Okay, this is known as the self-pollination. Okay, while in case of cross-pollination, here the transfer occur in the different flower. Okay, so that write down their definition also just for your exam. This is very important. The process of transfer of pollen grains from anther of one flower to stigma of another flower. Okay, so write down here is another. Okay, another flower. They are transferring occur between the another flower. Okay, clear? But here transferring occur between the same flower. So this is all about the self-pollination and pollination. Okay, as well as there are different agents of pollination. These agents are winds. Okay, it may be winds, and there are some waters. Okay, as well as insects, as well as birds. Okay, these are the different agents of pollination. Okay, so what do you mean the agents? Actually, agents means to say that take the pollen grain from one flower or one part of the plant and give it to the another part of the plant. Okay, so let me give you example of insect. Okay, so that insect help in the cross pollination. Mainly it help in the cross pollination. So how pollination, how they will help? Actually when an insect sit on the flower of a plant now for sucking the nectar, okay, for sucking the nectar now, then the pollen grains from anther of this flower stick on its body, and when this insect sit on any other flower now, then the pollen grain sticking to its body are transferred to the stigma of the second flower. So this is the way how the insect transfer the pollen grains from the anther of flower in one plant to the stigma of flower in another plant, and cause the cross pollination. Okay, and same thing happened with the wind blowing. When if there is a wind is blowing, that it also carries pollen grains from one flower to the another flower and helps in the cross pollination. Now, after a pollen grains falls on the stigma, the next step is fertilization. Okay, and when fertilization occur, it occur when the male gamete present in the pollen grains, it join the female gametes present in the ovule. Got it? So basically, if I am saying that this is a fusion, what is fertilization? This is a fusion of male and female gamete. Got it? Here there is a male gamete and female gamete. Both of these get fused together, then they form a new cell which is known as zygote. And this process is known as fertilization. Okay, actually fertilization is followed by the pollination. This pollination is followed by the fertilization in the plants. Okay, so let's see how this happens. Now everything is given here, whatever I teach you in the last slide. Now that pollen grain, this is the pollen grain, land on the stigma. When the pollen grain land on the stigma, when the pollen grain come here, now then the pollen tube grows. As usual, the pollen tube grows. Okay, of the pollen grains, it travel to the style and reaches the ovary. Okay, now when the pollen tube has two male germ cell. Okay, this can be again framed as an important question. You call it, either you call it male germ cell or you call it male gamete. Both are the same things. Okay, now each ovule has two polar nuclei and a female germ cell. Now as I told you that the fusion occur, and one thing you got here, zygote, another thing is the endosperm. That's why here is the double fertilization. I hope you got it. Okay, so to explain the events that occur in the fertilization, let me draw a diagram. Okay, so here I am going to draw a diagram. Okay, so imagine this is a stigma. Okay, here I am drawing the diagram of a stigma, and this is their tube stalk like structure, and here is the ovary. Okay, as I told you, in the ovary there are ovules are present. Now, so there are actually many ovules are present, but just to show you, just to draw, I am drawing only one single ovule. Okay, so here this is the ovule part. This is the ovule part. Here is the ovary part. Okay, and here is the stigma part. Okay, so what happened in the events during the time of fertilization? When a pollen grains falls on the stigma of the carpel. Okay, so imagine, I'm going to draw a diagram also again. Here is this one, here is the ovary, and here is the ovule. So basically, when a pollen grain falls on the stigma of the carpel, now what happened? Look at this part here. Okay, it burst the pollen grain. This is the pollen grain. Okay, that contain a male gamete. Okay, here a male gamete is present. This is the male gamete. Okay, gamete. Got it? So this pollen grain burst open and it grows a pollen tube. Got it? Toward the downward direction through the style toward the female gamete in the ovary. Okay, toward the female gamete in the ovary. Now through this pollen tube, this is the pollen tube right now. This is the pollen tube. Okay, so with the help of this pollen tube, so now through this pollen tube, the male gamete move toward the ovules. Okay, it moved toward the ovules. Got it? Now let's see what is present inside the ovule. Okay, this is the diagram of ovule. As I told you, this here is the ovule. This ovule is somewhat like that. Okay, so inside the ovule, female gamete is present as well as two nuclei is present. Okay, so what is present inside ovule? Ovule contain female gamete. Okay, female gamete plus two polar nuclei. Got it? Now what happened when the pollen grain reaches here? When the male gamete, okay, now when the male gamete reaches here, now what is present inside the ovule? There is a male gamete, one female gamete, as well as two polar nuclei. So as I told you, during the process of fertilization, there is a fusion of male gamete and female gamete occur. Okay, now let's do this. Okay, so inside the ovule, let's see what happened. Here is a male gamete. Now this male gamete fuse with the female gamete. Got it? They fuse with the female gamete. That is the egg cell. You call it the egg cell. Okay, they get fused with the egg cell. Okay, then they form zygote. Now finally the zygote is formed. A single cell structure is formed here. Okay, so this is the first thing. Now second process that occur inside the ovule is that male gamete male gamete. Actually, there are two male gamete, okay? So, don't get confused then why ma'am is writing male gamete and again male gamete, okay? Because there is two male gametes, okay? So, one male gamete fused with a female gamete, then it forms the zygote, okay? And the left male gamete is fused with the polar nuclei, okay? It fused with the polar nuclei. Just wait a minute, I am thinking another color, okay? Fused with the polar nuclei. Got it? Then they form endosperm. Endosperm. It means to say there is a double fertilization. Okay, so this is the double fertilization because here two time fusion occur, na? That's why double fertilization occur in plants. Okay, so this can be framed as an important question in your exam. So keep this in your mind, beta. Okay, that double fertilization, not a single fertilization just like the human beings. The plants have double fertilization. Why? Because there is two male gametes. One male gametes get fused with the female gametes, while another female gametes fused with the polar nuclei which is present inside the ovule. Okay, so write down one more terminology here, which is very important. That when there is a fusion of male gamete and female gamete, then this process is known as syngamy. Got it? And when there is a fusion of male gamete and a polar nuclei, this is known as triple. Just wait a minute. This is known as triple. Okay. Triple fusion. Why we call it triple fusion? Do you know that? Why we call it? Because there is two polar nuclei. Okay. So because there are two polar nuclei, that's we call it triple fusion. It means to say there's triple fertilization occur in case of plant. Okay. Now let me explain you with the help of another slide. Now what happened after fertilization? After fertilization, there are some changes takes place in the flower. Okay, actually the zygote, which is the fertilized egg, the zygote, it divides several times and form an embryo inside the ovule. All these things happen in the fertilization and the formation of embryo. All these things happens inside the ovule. Okay, now the ovule develops a tough coat and changes into a sheath. Okay, it develops a tough coat around itself and develop into the seed, this ovule. So there is a one point you have to note down, that ovule changes into the seed. Okay, got it? Ovule develop into the seed. But what happened with the to the ovary? This ovary, they becomes the fruit. Okay, this is another important point you have to be noted it. Okay, noted it down, that the ovary produces, the ovary becomes the fruit and the ovule develop into a seed. Okay, the ovary grows rapidly and ripens to form a fruit, as I told you. Now what happened with the petals, sepals, stamens and styles and stigma? They all shrivel and fall off. Got it? They all of dry up and fall off. Only the ovary is left behind. So at the place on plant where we had a flower originally, we now have a fruit which is actually the ovary of the flower containing seeds. Okay, actually, and the fruit, let me show you a diagram. Let me draw a diagram of the apple. Just wait a minute. Okay, so here's the apple. I hope you have drawn it many times in the lower classes. So here's the apple. Okay, so it's the internal part. This is a cut part of the apple. Okay, I'm showing you a cut part, and this is the stamen part. Okay, now let me show you. Okay, so the fruit protect the seeds. So here seeds are present inside the fruit. Okay, so this is an apple fruit. An apple is a fruit. It has a seed in it. Look at this. This is apple. Okay, this is apple, and here the seed is present. Okay, this is the seeds. Okay, inside the apple. So basically here this is a fruit, and this fruit contains seeds. Okay, inside the apple. I hope you got it. Okay, Clear? No, some fruits are soft, sweet and juicy like mangoes and orange. Do you know about that now? But some fruits are hard, dry and woody like peanuts and almonds, etc. Do you know that seed is the reproductive, this is the reproductive unit of a plant? How this is a reproductive unit? Actually, they can be used to grow a new plant. Okay, that's why I am saying. But how this will happen? This seed contains a baby plant. What they contain? They contain a baby plant. Okay, and also some food. They also contain food. Food for what? For the development of baby plant? For the development of baby plant. Okay, now see in this figure, what you observe here, that it contains two things. Okay, here two parts are present in this here plumule. Okay, and second the radicle. Okay, so what is the plumule? Plumule is the future shoot. This is the future shoot. This is going to be developed into a future shoot. Okay, and this is a radicle. That is the future root. Future root. Now another part is the cotyledon. What are the role of cotyledon? It provides nutrition. They provide nutrition for their growth. Got it? Clear? So basically this is the whole part. They form the this is the baby plant and they form the whole plant. They form the shoot, they form the root. Okay, and cotyledon, they provide nutrition for their growth. Okay, and whole the process is known as the germination. Okay, so let me explain all these lines. How this is the embryo, that is the baby plant, you call it the embryo. Okay, it contains plumule and radicle. Plumule develop into the shoot, while radicle develop into the root. The process of developing of seedling from the embryo under appropriate condition. Okay, keep this in mind. Then when the seeds get the suitable condition. Okay, when they get a suitable condition like like water. Okay, water, air, and warmth, etc. It germinate and develop into a new plants. Okay, then a new plant grows out of the seed. In this way, the parent plant reproduce more plants like itself by forming seeds through the flowers. Okay, so one more point, keep in your mind that baby plant is always not in an active state. Okay, the baby plant present in this seed it is in an inactive state, means to say it is in the dormant state. Okay, so when the seed gets suitable condition, then it will germinate only that time. Okay, so basically this is all about how the reproduction occur in case of flowering plants. Okay, and after that we will discuss about the sexual reproduction in case of human beings. So that's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.